The glow of the setting sun poured into Donovan Blake's penthouse office, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. Long shadows crept across the Manhattan skyline, dancing on the glass walls that framed the view like a portrait. He stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, adjusting his cufflinks for the umpteenth time, though there was no one left to impress. On his polished walnut desk, the divorce papers sat in perfect stillness, yet their presence roared louder than any storm. It was supposed to be a clean break, a necessary one. For her sake, he told himself. For both their sakes. But deep in the hollow ache of his chest, Donovan knew that wasn't the full truth. The quiet knock at the door snapped him out of his trance. And there she was, Leona, wearing pink. His favorite shade on her. The one that always did things to him he couldn't quite explain. Even now, standing at the edge of their goodbye, she looked devastatingly beautiful. Soft curls framed her face, and that subtle scent of vanilla and something warmer hit him like a memory he wasn't ready for. "You're early," Donovan murmured, his voice lower than he expected. "You're late," Leona replied, walking into the room with that quiet fire in her step. "But then again, you always are when it really counts." He glanced at his watch. 7:22 p.m. As usual, she was right. He wanted to say something, anything. Defense, maybe. Reason. But the words never quite made it past the lump in his throat. She reached the desk, fingertips grazing the edge of the documents that would soon make them strangers on paper. But her eyes never left his. "I didn't wear this for nothing," she said quietly, almost teasing, yet her voice cracked ever so slightly at the end. "I know it gets to you." Donovan swallowed hard. It did more than get to him. That color, that woman. He had fought every instinct for months, pretending detachment, masking desire with logic. He convinced himself it was noble to let her go, that she needed freedom, peace, something better than a man haunted by ambition and regrets. But in this moment, with her standing so close, the space between them trembling with all that remained unsaid, Donovan realized he had never stopped wanting her. Still he said nothing. Leona drew in a breath, the silence stretching between them like a wire pulled too tight. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, but it carried all the weight of the years they'd shared. "Before we sign anything," she said, "I have one last request." "I want us to have one more night together," Leona said, her voice low but clear, sending a jolt through Donovan's chest. He studied her closely, unsure if this was a plea for closure, or something more dangerous. "One more night," he echoed, a trace of caution in his voice. Leona nodded slowly, stepping into his space until the air between them vanished. Her hand found his chest, fingers trailing gently over his shirt as though searching for something familiar beneath the fabric. She leaned into him, resting her head lightly against him, and whispered, "No lawyers, no arguments, just the two of us. I need to remember what we were. What it felt like to be yours. Even if it's just this once." Her words struck him hard, twisting through the walls he'd carefully built around himself. He exhaled sharply, the scent of her hair bringing back 1,000 buried memories. "And if I say no?" he asked, his voice tight with emotion. "Then tomorrow," she said, her eyes rising to meet his. "We sign those papers and walk away like none of it ever mattered." "But Donovan, we were more than just a love that ended badly. We were a story. Don't we at least owe that story a final page?" Her hand pressed more firmly to his chest, and he could feel the tremble in her fingers. Real, desperate, human. He hesitated, then nodded once. "Fine. But I want the truth. No masks, no filters. I need to know everything." She looked up, surprise flashing in her eyes before it gave way to something softer. A small, aching smile touched her lips. "Everything," she promised, taking his hand. And as they walked out of the office, leaving the unsigned documents behind, neither of them could have imagined that what started as one last night would unravel a secret that would change both their lives forever. She led him quietly to the garden. Their garden. The one where time had once paused. where vows weren't spoken with words but with the look in their eyes, and where his lips had first found hers under the soft rustle of leaves. It was the same place they'd made that sacred promise, to stand by each other no matter the storms. She had reserved their favorite wine, the one they toasted with when dreams felt within reach. As she poured it into the glasses with trembling hands, her eyes never left his face. That gaze, deep, full of memories, mirrored the one she had worn the day she'd said yes, not just to a man but to a lifetime. "You were everything to me," she said, voice uneven, emotion trembling on every word. "You were my calm, my breath when I couldn't find my own." She looked away briefly, then back at him, her eyes glistening. "So tell me, how did we end up here?" she whispered, the tears now slipping freely. "Because I don't want this. I never did. You really want to know why I changed?" Donovan's voice barely cut through the silence, low and broken. He didn't look at her, couldn't. His hands were clasped together, knuckles pale from how tightly he held on. "I was diagnosed a few months ago. Something rare, aggressive. It's a degenerative neurological disease. 6 months left, maybe less." He breathed out like the words themselves were poison. "There's no treatment, no cure. Just time, and it's slipping through my hands faster than I can hold it." Leona's entire body stiffened, but she said nothing. Not yet. Her lips parted as if to speak, then closed again. Her chest rose with a sharp breath, but the fury in her eyes was building. He saw it before the words came. "You kept that from me," she said at last, her voice a whisper edged with fire. "All this time, while I was begging to understand what changed between us, while I was blaming myself. You let me spiral alone." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but they didn't fall yet. "You knew my first husband died of cancer," she continued, the bitterness now unmistakable. "But you also know he never told me. One day he was gone, and I found out the truth after they put him in the ground." Donovan's throat tightened. His stomach turned. "I lived with that guilt, Donovan," she said, her voice cracking. "The guilt of not knowing, of not being there to hold his hand or say goodbye. That silence destroyed me." Her tears finally slipped free, but she didn't flinch. "And you promised me I was safe, that I'd never be blindsided again. But you did exactly the same thing." Donovan bowed his head, as if trying to hide from the weight of her truth. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to repeat what he did. I thought if you hated me, if you believed I pushed you away on purpose, it would be easier for you when I was gone. I thought it would protect you from going through that pain again. But you didn't protect me," she said softly. "You broke me all over again." Leona couldn't take it anymore. The air in the garden, the very place that once felt like their safe haven, now felt suffocating, thick with words unspoken and pain too heavy to carry. Her chest heaved as if the truth had knocked the wind out of her. She turned and walked away, each step faster than the last until she was running like her legs could outpace the heartbreak. Donovan called after her, his voice cracking in the night air. "Leona, please, don't go. Just let me say everything. You deserve that much. Don't let me leave this world with your silence." His words stopped her. Slowly, shakily, she turned around, her eyes red and her breath uneven. She stared at him from across the space that used to hold so much joy, now brimming with grief. "You hurt me," she said, her voice trembling but laced with fire. "You didn't just hide the truth, Donovan. You made me question myself. I begged you to let me in, and you built walls. I blamed myself every single day. You stood right next to me and still made me feel alone." Her voice broke and tears streamed freely now. "But despite all that, despite the betrayal, I still can't imagine these next 6 months without you." Donovan's knees nearly buckled at her words. He stepped forward slowly, hands out like he was approaching something sacred. "Let me make it right," he whispered. "I don't want to waste another second. Whatever time I have left, I want it to be with you." She didn't respond with words. She closed the distance between them in a heartbeat, and when she kissed him, it wasn't soft or unsure. It was urgent, fierce, desperate. Like she needed the feel of him to anchor her. Like it was the only thing keeping him alive. His arms wrapped around her tightly, grounding him in her warmth. And when their lips parted, she looked into his eyes with all the strength she had left. "Then promise me," she said through tears, "that we won't waste a moment. No more lies. No more fear. We fight this together. If you go down, I go down with you." But we finished this story side by side. In the days that followed, Leona became Donovan's entire world. Not just as a wife, but as the gentle anchor keeping him from slipping beneath the waves. Every morning, she rose early to prepare meals that matched his treatment needs. Soft foods for the days his stomach turned, soups rich in nutrients, and herbal teas to ease the nausea. She sat with him through every doctor's appointment, taking mental notes, asking the questions he was too tired to ask. At home, she curled up beside him under thick blankets, watching the old black and white films he used to love. Even when his laughter was faint, she held onto it like a thread, refusing to let go. At night, when the world outside went quiet, Leona would press soft kisses to his forehead, whispering the same promise into the dim room over and over. "We're in this together," she'd murmur, fingers tracing the back of his hand. "I won't let go." Sometimes they talked for hours, sometimes not at all. Just silence and steady breaths as she wrapped her arms around the man who had once been her rock, and now leaned on her more than ever. She tried her best to keep him smiling, filling their home with warmth, light, and little joys. But with each passing day, his strength faded. He slept more. He moved less. And when he did finally rest, Leona would slip into the bathroom, close the door, and crumble to the floor. There she'd let the sobs escape, the ones she kept hidden behind every brave smile. She didn't want him to see her break. He needed her to be strong. In that silence she would pray, her fingers clenched tightly together, whispering pleas into the darkness. "Please don't take him from me. Not yet. Not like this." She didn't just love Donovan. He was her heartbeat, her past and future. And even as she watched him fade, Leona refused to stop hoping that love, and maybe a miracle, would still find them. One quiet night, when the air outside turned crisp and the warmth between them was all that mattered, Leona stepped out of the bathroom in his favorite color. Soft pink, delicate and barely there. She didn't speak at first. She just walked to the bed slowly, the dim glow of the bedside lamp wrapping her in golden light. Donovan's eyes followed her, tired but full of awe, as though seeing her for the first time again. He was weak, breath shallow from the long day, but his heart quickened just watching her approach. She climbed into bed, careful with his frame, and laid gently on top of him, letting her warmth settle against his chest. He coughed softly, his body trembling beneath her. "I don't think I can," he began, but she silenced him with a kiss that was tender, full of longing. "You don't have to do anything," she whispered against his lips, her voice soft and sure. "Just let me love you. Let me have this moment with you." Her touch was slow, reverent, her fingers tracing the outlines of the man she had always seen as unbreakable. And despite the fragility of his body, the strength in his desire hadn't left him. Their bodies moved in sync, not rushed, not urgent, just deep, connected. Her soft moans echoed into the night, her name whispered from his lips like a prayer. Even in his weakness, Donovan still made her feel everything, cherished, alive, wanted. When they reached that quiet, shattering climax, they collapsed into each other, breathless and trembling. She rested her head against his shoulder, his arm wrapping tightly around her, as if he never wanted to let go. "Promise me we'll keep doing this," she murmured, eyes closed, heart racing. He brushed his lips to her forehead and whispered, "As long as I breathe, I'll hold you." Wrapped in each other, in the dark warmth of their love, nothing else mattered. Not time, not pain, just the promise between two souls who chose to stay. Even when the end was near. 2 weeks later, the evening sky painted the city in shades of fading gold, but Donovan barely noticed. He stood alone on the balcony, staring out into the distance as if trying to make peace with something that wouldn't give him answers. The breeze brushed against his face, cold but calming, yet the weight inside him only grew heavier. He had been quiet all day, more so than usual, and Leona had noticed. From the kitchen she called out gently, "Donovan!" But there was no answer. She called again, her voice louder now, tinged with worry. Still nothing. She stepped outside, and that's when she saw him. His body was slumped against the railing, eyes closed, his face pale. "Donovan!" she screamed, racing toward him, her hands trembling as she dropped beside his collapsed frame. Panic gripped her chest as she shook him gently, then harder. No response. Within minutes, paramedics arrived, and she rode in the ambulance, her hand clutching his the entire way, whispering prayers through tear-streaked cheeks. That night at the hospital was a blur. Machines beeped steadily, monitors flickered, and the doctor's words came like muffled thunder. "We're doing our best. He's stable but unconscious. We've placed him in a medically induced coma to relieve pressure." Leona sat in the hallway, numb, her thoughts spinning like a carousel she couldn't get off. She hadn't left his side for hours. Her heart was breaking open, but then, something unexpected. She had taken the test earlier that week, thinking it was stress just to be sure. Now, in the silence of the hospital bathroom, she stared at the result she had almost forgotten to check. Positive. Tiny life, inside her. Her hand covered her mouth as she slid down the wall, sobbing not just from fear, but from love. "Please come back," she whispered, holding her stomach. "They need their father. I need you, Donovan." But he lay still, behind glass and tubes, as the night swallowed her prayers.